by asbestos. The second part of that is they've known that for decades now. The industry has known for decades that the product that they made would cause a disease that was so horrendous that when you talk to these people that are in the last couple of weeks of their life, they said, if you could just put a gun to my head and kill me, I'd be better off. That's how painful this disease is. It's a rare progressive cancer. It attacks the lining of the chest wall. There's nothing they can do about it. At best, they can prolong the life with chemotherapy, with very, very radical surgery. In a perfect world, they can have a lung transplant, which we know what the results of that typically is. Has a 30-year latency. In other words, a man that gets exposure to asbestos, it might be 30 years before the malignant mesothelioma shows itself. It's a very, very, very unique kind of cancer in the way that it encases the lungs and actually crushes the lungs with this huge tumor. And, what about the threshold limit on this? There's really no threshold, is there, Bobby?
Well, there's no safe level for being exposed to asbestos. Any of these fibers can get in with everybody that's been exposed. Now, this thing works in. We've seen up to 50 years of latency in some studies. So this is an ongoing concern. This is not old news. And the people that they're looking to protect now are, like you say, the ones that knew about it, but there's also these big companies that aren't in bankruptcy, and they've looked at this. And the winners in their scheme would be Dow Chemical, be Ford Motors Company, General Motors, Honeywell, Pfizer, and Viacom.
Those are companies that are on the list of people that knew what was going on. I had every reason to know. I remember, Bobby, I remember us trying a case together. God, it had to be 20 years ago. We were some of the first people trying some of these cases throughout the country. And I remember some of the documents that we saw back then, the Sumner-Simpson documents, where if I were to characterize what the industry knew, we're talking about 1920s and the 1930s. You had an industry that were basically writing documents that if I were to distill what they had to say word for word, there's too many. There are too many smoking gun documents. There's too many documents where you have CEOs saying, to hell with the workers, we need to make a profit. Basically, if you take all of those documents and you distill what they have to say, it comes out this way. These guys that are using asbestos make a good living with asbestos, and they can die with asbestos. That's their risk. Basically, that's what those documents say and mean. Every time I would read one of those documents to the jury, the jury, you would actually see them gasp at how callous these companies really were. But when you're talking about something called malignant mesothelioma, it's not just a slap on the wrist that ought to take place here. You see, I think, and you said this to me one time, I think in a conversation, I think, you would prefer that there be no lawsuits. You would prefer that what we do is we round these CEOs, these people that made these decisions, and we throw them in jail. And we take away the civil case. There's not a matter of the corporation going to trial and having to pay for the damages.
If there were any justice in the world,